The government has a problem in my case, and that is that they cannot show any evidence of drug use. And you'll find it absent in any of the documents. That's on the government. If they decide they need to show that, then they will attempt to show it. The government has a problem.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
You've done all the reading. You're a scholar, you're a professor. You've done all the reading. You've done the intellectual heavy lifting.
More or less, eat shit and die.
You wouldn't know a fact if it begged you all night long.
Want to give the wrong impression, because I am very high.
Ran up behind him with a hatchet. Smash, smash, smash. Yeah.
Care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is,
Did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen.
That was the perfect answer. Thank you.
And blowing me up because people can't fucking figure this shit out on their own. These are adults. These are adults arguing about the dumbest stuff, and they pay me ungodly amounts of money to take care of it. By the way, I do wear glasses. I have to be able to see so it's a pain. So a few years ago, I had eye surgery. I never really had glasses growing up, needed them at all. Started to chalkboard length, whatever, and started having a little trouble. You're getting a little older, looking at the computer maybe too much. So I had eye surgery, and it was great. Now my eyes are going bad again. It's been like maybe 15 years or so, and I don't know that I want eye surgery again, but I wear either contacts and I don't need it for reading. So I put these on to see the distance, like I'm in court and I'm doing this and I'm trying to I'm fucking taking this off, but it's a pain. So we wear contacts. Well, then you got to have reading glasses for up close. It's just a pain. Getting old sucks. I hope everyone had a good weekend. Let's take a look here at some of this. People are already coming in. Thanks for this. What could be worse than a 9-year-old testing positive for cocaine? An 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, your wife? I don't know, any of that. Being pregnant, maybe? Here for the Rekieta drama. Apparently there's an info dump coming this week, and that makes 9-year-old kids on coke look like a Vickers tea party. Wow, I'm going to be here for it. So I don't want to just every day Rekieta, but there's still stuff. And I thought there was one aspect of Rekieta. I played that clip, and we'll play it again. And this is why Nick is, it talks about, someone said, I think on one of his podcasts, I think something about his peers or his colleagues. And I'm like, he's not my colleague. I'm a practicing attorney. Not doing coke. We are not at all alike. He's not a practicing attorney. And we're going to walk through some of this things. And Tyler, why are you shitting on him? Why not? Lincoln's here. Wow, Tyler, can you ranch because you'd be dressing? Oh, okay, whatever. I can't always read this. Looking sharp, but who is billing for this? You all. You all are billing for this. I only bill my clients when I'm actually working. I do a good job of that. If there's been swingers for as long as there's been rumored, some of those kids may not even be mixed. Wow. Griff the Rekieta drama as long as it keeps going. Absolutely. And there's interesting stuff. And by the way, we're going to read some mailbag stuff here because I think it's important. People seem to be enjoying some of the takes I have. And I saw another thing, and Shannon had mentioned this last week about his family law attorney. Maybe he's getting a divorce. Okay, makes a little sense. I didn't know that I didn't dig into his attorneys about who he got or what they actually practice. Small towns, you can have an attorney that does everything, okay? Criminal, Nick's kind of talked about that. It sounds like he got a family law attorney, and rightly so, at least for the CPS part of it. Totally makes sense. As I said, I like to really differentiate. I'm not hard up for money or clients, therefore I really am specific about stuff I do. I could always use more money, but not really on the hard up for clients. But when I first started, I would, you kind of venture into those things. It's like, I need a client, need to just pay, and you're going to learn. I don't want to learn on my client's behalf, so therefore it's best that they go to someone who's already been there and done that. And Nick probably went to CPS stuff to someone who could actually help him quite nicely. Let's take a look here over at Rumble. I wanted to see, I did a little bit different thing. No one's over on Rumble yet. I did a little bit different setup with the Rumble, so I'll see if I get chats coming in from there. But anyway, welcome everybody. Tyler Yonke, family law attorney, libertarian podcast review. We're kind of libertarian-ish, but it's just what we do. Okay, Let's play this real quick again. This is Nick. And by the way, I find clips that he does and play them because I don't watch his whole stream.
Case, and that is that they cannot show any evidence of drug use.
Okay. First of all, let's put myself in the screen here. Sorry, losing myself here. Perhaps as we talked about before, Nick did a hair follicle test, which is at least a 5-panel, and sometimes it's 9 or more. We'll take a look at everything. Cocaine was definitely on the list. He and his wife did not sign over the right to have them release the results. Now these tests, and this is why I wanted to do a little bit of Nick stuff here, is because I did not really break that. There's been some controversy about whether the results are even valid. That Nick should definitely push back on that. Should definitely have those, retested. But he didn't release his results. So, and by the way, these things, these hair follicles, will take a look. You're able to. They pull the hair out. You can even do fingernails, and they're able to see the degradation within their spectrometry on mass spectrometry microscope and whatnot, or chemicals analysis to understand what drugs are there and at what levels to understand how long it's been proceeding. So these things can stay in your system, 30, 60, 90 days. So if he's done it within there, and there, by the way, there's leaked audio now where it almost sounds like Hot Mic, where he's doing blow on cam. Well, it's not on the camera, but it's definitely on the audio. So crazy stuff. By the way, I'm imagining some random YouTube vlogger referring to other vloggers as my colleagues. He was specifically talking, when the quote I saw, Nick, was specifically talking about attorneys. He passed the bar. I mock him now only because I didn't have a problem with this before. I was like, hey, I'd like to do that. I'd like to make the money I do, but just being on the internet, not having to deal with the stress of this. But, once again, he's proven here in this comment that they don't have any evidence that he was using drugs. Okay, fine. What is the charge against him? Is it a charge of using cocaine or possessing cocaine? Look back at my first one I think we did. We broke down the charges that were on Nick. It's possession, okay? This amount of cocaine in possession, you're either trafficking, you're using it. It's constructive possession, which is it's an illegal substance. It's in your possession. It doesn't have to, they don't have to show. Now you said if they want to, they could show that they're going to have to prove it. Let's keep going with the quote. Okay, take a big swig. I hope that's water.
And you'll find it absent in any of the documents.
Okay, they don't need, the coke doesn't need to be in the documents.
That's on the government. If they decide they need to show that, then they will attempt to show it.
Okay. And they don't have to show it. They just have to show possession. Okay, now, they did show that the daughter had cocaine, so there's a problem right there. But once again, the charge itself is not that he was using drugs. It's that he was in possession of drugs. Okay, that's the actual charge. Now, as far as the family stuff goes and the CPS, yeah, being in possession or use, either one of those are going to be harmful to his case. And they've got a problem, which is we found it in your possession. We'll see about the results. Maybe you're not doing drugs. This is all just stupid stuff with Nick, though. It makes me come out being nitpicky when it's stupid, and I should be on his side as far as like the government's got to show everything, but he's just kind of, and your kid is tested positive. So we have a problem with that too. I was going to start off with woke colleges. Let's maybe pivot to that real quick because it's not a huge thing I want to do, and then we'll come back to Nick. And again, what I wanted to talk about was interpreting the actual drug levels in the kids and whatnot. I went over that a little bit. It's not usually when I get these results, then I talk to an expert, either the lab itself, and they'll have them break it down to me, or I have an expert that's going to counter, and I talk to them and they do a report, and then I can go through it. It just doesn't. I don't remember it all the top, and I don't do this as far as ton of cases where I'm doing hair follicle testing. A lot of times we're doing alcohol testing and stuff, and that's pretty simple to do. Did they blow? Did they blow? A certain amount. colleges. My son graduated. Let's pull this up here. So let's add this to the stage. There's my little slideshow I have for Nick. Let's do that one there. Okay, that's Nick. Now my son. Oh, Fox and Sons. If you want, I'm going all over the place. If you want to get coffee, I go to foxandsons.com. 18% off of your orders. $25 or more. Now it's orders of $37.99. Oh, that's shipping. $25 or more. If you order that much. I don't get anything from this, by the way. Nothing at all. He used to send me bags of coffee. No longer does that. I get my coffee from there just because I think it's fantastic. So if you guys drink coffee, I would go to foxandsons.com. All kinds of amounts. And if you look back in my catalog of stuff, I did a whole show with Steve talking about the coffee. I'm a coffee freak. So here's my son, Mason. He just graduated nursing school and went to his graduation. And I talked about this a little bit before where they were incessant about, hey, 4 years ago, everyone was COVID, right? COVID was a problem, and these poor kids, they couldn't go to school, and they had to go online. And I'm like, okay, well, you guys, you could have gone. You did as a school, decided that this wasn't going to happen. And then they're like, oh, and they're so brave, and they're coming back. And it's gross to me. It just felt like they were normalizing this problem that they had also created. And then they had this is a private school, and then they all had a whole thing about DEI and gave some guy an award. And it was, my daughter sent me a text, because we're all sitting there watching this. It's like before the person that was actually going to give the commencement address, they didn't even talk about the kids, except for COVID. It's all about teachers and this and that, and I'm like, I don't have a lot of respect. Sorry for professors, for teachers, especially during the COVID thing where they're all non-essential. And I'm sorry if you're a teacher or whatnot, but the TikToks, all these little things that happen, it's like there's a lot of to it. But I thought when I saw that. What it reminded me of with the DEI is this thing, Ryan Long and his buddy. Little thing here. This is a short minute 44. We'll play this real quick of how much DEI, when you really push it out there, it is such a racist persona idea, and how a woke person and a racist really have a lot in common. Let's take a look at this.
Brad first met, I didn't think we'd get along, but turns out we kind of agree on everything. Your racial identity is the most important thing. Everything should be looked at through the lens of race.
Jinx, you owe me a Coke. We both have a lot of opinions about people of color, even though we barely know any.
I say colored people, but as long as we're classifying them, we both think minorities are a united group who think the same and act the same.
And vote the same. You don't want to lose your black card. Sorry, I don't know. I just think we should
Roll back discrimination laws so we can hire based on race again. Jinx, now you owe me a Coke. Hey, tell them what you told me yesterday.
White actors should only do voices for white cartoon characters.
I've been saying that for years. Stick to your own.
Us white people, we have so much privilege.
I agree. It is a privilege to be white. Ask him about interracial dating.
All I said is that black men who date white women have internalized racism, and white men that date ethnic women are fetishizing them.
Guys against interracial dating now. Like, am I being pranked? Did Boomer put you up to this?
Ugh, you know that taco place is white owned?
White people should be making white foods, like Kraft macaroni and cheese, no seasoning, not even salt. It's like he's a mind reader. I mean, I've been pushing for segregation forever, and my man does what?
I created an improv comedy show exclusively for ethnic people.
Guy segregates comedy on my birthday.
White people need to stop wearing dreadlocks, and they need to stop appropriating black people's music.
Shaved heads and country music, the way God intended.
You know all white people are racist.
I'm listening.
Even if you have a black wife or a black friend group, you're still really racist.
You know, we just kicked a guy out of the organization for having a black girlfriend, but if you can promise me he's still really racist, we'll consider letting him back in. Black people should only shop at black businesses.
I guess the only thing we really disagree about is I think white people are the root of all evil.
But what did I tell you, though? If we can narrow that down to a certain group of tiny-hatted white people, I think we can come to an understanding.
Technically, I don't consider Jewish people white.
Neither do I.
Okay, that's... I love the crossover we have there. Okay, Aaron, you guys you just can't get away from the Nick stuff, so we'll keep going there. Aaron, April's ex said it was blow. You heard 2 separate sniffs, likely on a paper being dragged across the desk. Yeah, so I watched something. There's a leaked audio, and it was Nick, and it sounds like people saying it sounds like it's this April chick still in the house, not his wife. I don't know why he's online, but thank God he is, because look what it gives us. Okay, let's take a look. I think I had... I'm going to talk to you guys about, let's do this. What am I watching? If I'm going to give you a few ideas of some things to watch on TV, of some interesting tidbits. And the Tour de France is coming up. I'm a big cyclist. I'm going to do a podcast on that later, not on this channel. So if you're interested in any of that, but if you're not, perfectly fine. But I would go to Netflix and watch their Unchained. It's a different aspect of cycling with it showing the Tour de France. It is drama, forward and backwards, and I think it's great sporting to check it out. There's some people complaining. There's drug accusations, some whining, bikes, a lot of crashes. And I think it's exceptional. So I would go check that out if you wanted to. It's on Netflix. It's called Unchained. Season 2 just came out. This one was disturbing. We sat down, my wife and I sat down and watched it last week. It's called Tell Them You Love Me. And let's see, where is I can't really read it because now I put it too small. This documentary explores the controversial relationship between a professor and a nonverbal man that leads to a trial over race, disability, and power. Hardly anything about race. Just letting you know they both try to do it, but this is a woman who tries to save the black man in a sense. Disturbing on so many levels, and I don't know that I want to spoil it, but I'll just keep this one. Watch it, please watch it. Look at the crazy eyes that she has there. That's the professor. Watch it and just keep one thing in mind: the guy's in diapers. The guy is in diapers. That's what y'all need to think. The next one, we just saw this one. This is the Sherry Papini documentary of the hoax right up here, not too far from where we're at. I'm in Sacramento area, and she was up there in Redding, where she was abducted in 2016, disappeared, and they couldn't find her. 22 days later, she shows up. She had been just brutalized, beat, branded. And she said it was by two Hispanic women. You can imagine you're at a Motel 6. The cleaning crew comes and grabs you up and just takes you away. And you're like, what the hell? There's an interesting, fascinating part where, as a teenager, on some white supremacist website, it's supposedly her. She said it was a prank. Lady lies about everything. So it ended up being a hoax on that. They ended up catching her and finding out that it was a hoax. And you can imagine this. She goes, look here, she goes from like super hot, skinny, big titties. She got fake ones, to she insists on starting to have her cut her brows like that, and she just looks crazy as all get out. That is the show. We've been doing really good. You guys have been watching the show lately, so our viewers are really going up. This is a clip here. Let's take a look. Not a clip, but a post. By Dick Masterson, and this is kind of where I want to start going next, which is, what do you think? Y'all fucking null? Question mark. A 9-year-old girl tests positive for an amount of cocaine that would kill a blown junkie, and no one even pauses for a goddamn second before running with it. Gee, that is so sad. A little girl would do an 8-ball of cocaine every day for months. Thank God the government got involved. You don't think there's something, all in caps, something wrong with the test, even for a second? You think the government retests drug shit when they get a result that helps them out and fucks you over? They do not. They run with it. They publish it and they want to run with it. It helps them. Not completely wrong, but what proof does he give that the test results are wrong, that they're an anomaly, and that Nick is going to have these redone? This is the good thing about hair follicle tests. So maybe I should go here. Let's just talk about the hair follicle test real quick. Once again, we talked about this last time. There's drug cutoff levels. Let's see. Do I want to look at this one here? Yeah, we could say, how does it work? Let's pull up this website. We've gone through some of these before, but well, actually, I don't know how much detail we went into it on before. What is a hair follicle drug test? A hair follicle drug test screens for the misuse of prescription medication and illicit drug use. The test involves a small number of hair strands being cut from the head close to the scalp. Then your hair sample is tested by a lab to determine if there has been any drug use for the last 90 days. Okay, so it really takes an in-depth review of this. So when Nick says, hey, there's no no drug use here, they don't have any evidence of it, be like, okay, well, you didn't sign the disclosure to have your results released. That's a problem. If you do, or get retested. I mean, maybe do an independent lab. I do that. I'm not me personally, but I tell clients, there's an issue. Oh, I think I'm like, then you know what you do? You start getting clean, and then you're going to start getting drug tests. I've never done drug. Okay, if you've never done them, then let's do this hair follicle test. One, in California, they can't order it. But you can use it in court. It's not like a lie detector test where it's just inadmissible. It can be admissible evidence to show. It's just that they can't order you to take it in a lot of times for now. Different in Minnesota. They used a 10 panel. I don't know which one they used here in Minnesota, but they did. In a hair follicle test, the sample hair is used, usually from the root or close to it, to screen for drug use. When you use drugs, they are absorbed into the bloodstream. Within each hair follicle, there is a blood vessel that feeds hair growth cells. If you have used any substances, those drugs are carried into the hair follicle via the blood vessel. So if we start to see Nick totally shaved head to toe, he's either got crabs or he's preparing for a hair follicle test. Traces of the substance can be detected to the hair follicle, which is why it's called a hair follicle drug test. The hair follicle drug test can screen for various types of drugs, both prescription and illegal. Some of the drugs tested include marijuana, cocaine, amphetamines, methamphetamines, PCP, ecstasy, opioids, prescription drug killers, and heroin. When you go to have a hair follicle drug test, the hair sample is taken must be directly from your head. You cannot use hair from a brush or other sources. The sample has to include enough strands to equal about the thickness of a pencil, and it needs to be at least 1.5 inches long. Despite the name of the test, the hair doesn't have to be pulled to include the root, but it must be cut as close to the scalp as possible. Usually, hair drug tests take place in a lab or other medical setting. Some workplaces may cut the hair themselves and send it to a laboratory using a kit. Additionally, hair test kits can be purchased online for at-home use. If a clean drug screen is required for hire, your employer has mandated that you have to test. You will likely have to be done in a supervised facility. This ensures that the hair that is taken does in fact belong to you. Once your identity is confirmed, the lab technician and other personnel will cut about 100 to 120 strands of hair from the crown of your head. Suck for your haircut there. They may collect hair from other areas or multiple areas, and they do not have. If you do not. And they do not leave a bald spot. If you have very short hair or are bald, Clint, the lab technician may take hair from other parts of your body instead. The hair is then placed in a foil and then a security envelope, and it is sent for testing. Whether you wash your hair, dye, bleach it, or use styling products, it will not affect the hair follicle drug test's accuracy. It will show any use within the last 5 to 90 days. Hair follicle drug test cutoff levels. This is where we start to get into a little bit more, because I always get an expert that knows it, and we take it from there. Now, part of the problem you may have with, or they may have with this, is how you are actually determining where the cutoff levels and how it is being reported. Let's add this real quick here, because here is the one that they use. So after being placed in the house, out of the house, the children subject to hair follicle, this is the CPS findings here, test, all the children except for blank tested negative. Blank tested positive for cocaine at a level over 5,000 with a cutoff of 500. Okay, and this is picograms per picograms per milligram, I think is what 0.3 picogram per milligram of hair. That's marijuana, but these are picograms per milligram. Now, some of these that I've seen, which are much lower numbers, so I think her number was 5,000. So you look at this with cocaine, it says between 2 to 10,000, it's medium use, daily, weekends. Now, I think it also has to do with how long it's been or whatnot. So she's in this range of, hey, this has happened a few times, okay? Maybe it's perhaps someone had said sleeping in the same bed with him, gross, because he's got his girlfriend in there too. I don't know, maybe but it's not abnormally high levels. It would be though, because some of these lab, where they report these, or the results, they do it in nanograms per milligram, so which is a smaller amount. So if you have 5,000 nanograms per milligram, you're dead. Okay, that's the problem you have, and maybe that's where people are saying. I don't know where Dick Masterson gets his answers from, or what he's saying. Once again, I'm not sure where this range is, and if it's too high, then you know what, Nick's going to have an easy answer, which is you're going to bring an expert in. They're going to say, we retested her, okay? We retested her because, once again, it's not like a one-shot deal and you're done and over and this is DNA's gone or whatnot. This is 90 days, it could be in there. Let's retest her. The numbers too. She's got a bunch of hair. We'll just keep ripping that shit out and cutting it off until we get something. Maybe we'll have a nice display and pattern of use or non-use. It's a one outside. If you retest her now 3-4 times, let's say, the next few times going over here, and she only has this one positive and it's, out of bounds, then yeah, it's going to be rejected. So maybe we were overstating this situation as it was. Okay, let's go back to, there we go. So these are cutoff levels. Let's read about what it says about cutoff levels. The hair follicle drug testing uses cutoff levels to indicate whether a test is negative or positive for the presence of a specific drug. In the employment drug testing, there is an industry standard that involves a two-tier testing method. That means that there is an initial screening as one part of the hair specimen, then another test or confirmation test, another part of the original sample. Makes sense, an A and a B. The first test is used, and a lot of times, like cycling or Olympics that are coming up here, they will do an A and a B sample, and with that A sample, if it's negative, they don't test the B. If it's positive, then they test the B to confirm. If it's negative, now it might be a problem. I don't know the whole protocol, but you've got a problem. Maybe you need to completely retest. Okay. At first, test is used to separate negative samples from any further testing. Exactly. The second and more thorough testing uses more definitive process, including chromatography, mass spectrometry to identify and measure specific drugs in the sample. It's essential that cutoff levels are selected based on the substance tested for to comply with regulation standards. It's only if the substance is identified at concentration levels that are equal to or greater than the cutoff, okay? Levels that are equal to or greater than the cutoff. And it will be reported as a positive result by the lab. This means that a negative test doesn't necessarily mean that there wasn't a drug indicated. It just means that there was in an amount lower than the cutoff level and therefore couldn't be reported. The cutoff levels for follicle testing are stated in picograms PG per milligram mg. The cutoff levels for most common hair adjusted are as follows, and this has it at 300. So they had an even higher number, which was 500. Remember, they did 500 was the cutoff level. That's what we had here, 500 with cutoff. Cutoff of 500, but she tested over 5,000. So once again, there was one other hair follicle. Let's take a look at this one. Stop that, add this. Okay, this gives you, once again, just another screening. I don't know where this really came from, but it's just a typical one for different panels. These have a screening cutoff of 500 picograms, confirmation cutoff 500, and then talking about use, and once again, cocaine, 5 to 2,000 would be low use, recreational, medium use, 2 to 10, but once again, 2 to 10, she's on the lower end of that range. Okay, she's 10,000, which is obviously the higher, and then 10,000 and above is high, constant use. That's probably where Nick's at. So, there you go. Now, I had one more here. Let's take a look. Let's see if I have this other one. Where'd it go? There we go. No, there we go. Now, this one talked about levels as well. And where are we at here? There we go. So this one shows nanograms, okay? So talks about 0.5 nanograms, the cutoff level, 0.5. So if this is where they're taking the cutoff and they understand and they're looking at the results, but they're comparing it to a nanogram per milligram standard, you're going to say, yeah, she should have been dead at this point. So perhaps that. I don't know, where we really are with this. Okay. Let's get here with some of this else. Not doing blow, but April is in the background. Yeah, that's true. Proving that she is still in the house. Exactly. Aaron's ex said it was blow. You'd hear 2 separate sniffs, likely a paper being dragged across the desk. Yeah, it's just too stupid. Bangs are a telltale sign of instability. Absolutely. Anytime my wife and I have had any kind of fighting, it's when she had bangs years ago. I'm just kidding. At least regular usage, they may have given her Coke instead of ADHD. By the way, I just talked about the Sherry Papini came out after the fact, this whole hoax thing, and then she's getting arrested. They start doing a forensic thing with the kids because one night the dad's like, oh, my shoulder kind of hurts. She goes, oh, you should do what mommy does when she's not feeling well. And he's like, well, what's that? And she's like, she sniffs rubbing alcohol. He's like, what? He's like, yeah. and she took him into the bathroom, showed him how she douses a thing with rubbing alcohol and then sniffs it, and then she would take alcohol in these rags and then tie it around their necks so they would, the kids, this is like 2 and 4, 4 and 6, somewhere in there, where they would sniff it and inhale it so that they would be feeling ill, and then she could take them to the doctor and be like, oh, my, Munchausen by proxy type of thing. So you never know what these are actually giving their kids. Phobe says, sup, nerds. Exactly. Okay, so we don't really know the whole situation with the drugs. I just wanted to put that out there to understand that there are levels, and what the nice part about the hair follicle thing is, let's keep going. Let's keep testing. Let's get if I was sure that this was not the case and it was a false positive, test her again, and now you've got some issues to work through. Let's see, did I get all those things? Cutoff levels, no evidence of drugs. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about with that. Okay, let's go to, I want to pull up here, let's walk through some, people had some comments. Maybe we can answer these right on together. This is the best breakdown of this situation I've heard. I subbed. Oh, thank you, Dwayne. And I think you're in there in the thing too. Appreciate that, y'all. Kids slept in bed with the parents. Okay, could be. Everyone lies. I don't know. I don't remember. I don't think it happened that way. I don't think that's what I said. I really don't know her. She wasn't my girlfriend. I have aunt children. Yeah, okay. They also had Adderall. They also hand Adderall out like candy, and almost every parent on them is up and down full of rage, some with alcohol. It's hypocritical. I'm not a fan of Nick, but as long as it's away from kids, I don't think anyone deserves jail times. These days, don't need to worry about getting rid of meth and fentanyl. Look, I'm going to keep saying this partly because the word libertarian is in this podcast name, and I think it's important to really express this. If this was just in a vacuum, him doing drugs or in his wife or his threesome, who cares, right? Even if you have a family and you're doing, but I've talked about this, especially from a family. You're now in the system, and he's complaining about, yes, this is life. This is what we have, and you now are caught into this. So you've got to be basically concerned about that. And when you start putting yourself out there at doing this and you're getting caught, now you've got problems. And once again, your 9-year-old daughter has coke. It's more than just, it's a lifestyle for me. You are now projecting on her something that it could be very detrimental and dangerous. Over on Rumble, Mr. Lee Sensi says, hello, is this live or pre-recorded? It's pre-recorded. Let's say it's pre-recorded. There you go. Answer that. Okay, let's take a look at some, maybe a few more of these comments. I think if you're born and you have incurable disease, certain drugs should be legal for those who self-medicate responsibly just to stay alive. I've had a doctor's degree, especially people with major depressive disorder and reject med syndrome. It means you're hopeless and no meds work. Opioids help people in that way. Their minds work again, and they can think straight, and they get out of bed and they make it work. Big difference in people being responsible and those being criminals, crackheads. Read more. Crackheads, you would do anything to not leave the earth. The suffering is so horrific. Most have horrific childhood. They ruin their brains and need something. I believe, yes, people have problems. They don't go get the correct help they need, and then they self-medicate. That is obviously a problem. Just once again, don't put these problems on your kids. 2 words from that first case, banal trapper. No, please. Love low content, but that's too much. Okay. Very good. Nick is cooked. I think I talked about a case where I had they used the word anal rape all the time. Okay, and that was part of the problem. Sorry, it was a legit story. And by the way, here's a little bit of an insight on that, which is, Mom asked Dad to join them for a threesome with someone that she was friends with, which was another girl. He said, "No, I'm not really into that." So she went and had the twosome. Now she's kind of becoming a lesbian. Then she wants a divorce, and she thinks that perhaps, now they had some nasty stuff. You know what? I'm not going to talk about this case anymore. It's so fascinating, but I don't really have time for it today. The point is, she accused him of diddling their kids, and it didn't happen. And there was a crazy expert that said, yes, he had done so, and we were able to get past that through many hours of trial. Okay, not unreasonable that parents would dose their ADHD kid with cocaine to calm them down. Okay, Great stream. Thank you. Last one we'll do here. Here in Australia, the best interest factor include things like parents' attitude towards the parenting role, the lifestyle of the parents, the benefit of the child from meaningful relationship. Here, he would likely not get a good outcome due to his statements and conduct since the removal. I'm so glad I found your channel. As a final tier law student looking to get into family law, looking forward to watching your past videos. That's Calentus Mortius. Well, thanks, and good luck in law school. Final year, but still final tier. Okay. Oops, I did the down button. Let's do an up button. Thanks for that, for her. Good luck in law school. Once again, law school should teach you how to think as an attorney and not necessarily anything else, but good. Let me talk about best interest standards. That is exactly what almost every state has. We just went through one this morning. It's the best interest of the child. I actually had the judge say to me, yes, but in your case, how does this benefit the children? Thank you for asking. And then I was able to lay it out just fine, and we did win. So the best interest, the problem with that, though, it is somewhat subjective. What is the best interest? They've actually codified it into law here in California that if you don't affirm your child's gender, how they are, it could be considered not the best interest of the child. That's horrible to me, and I just hope I don't ever have a case that deals with that. So it could be almost anything, and it could be the way he's talking about things online. We use your social media all the time, so people, beware of those things. Josh says, jumping out, but I hope the rest of the stream goes well. Looking forward to listening to the rest of it tomorrow. Yeah, you're actually good. Fascinating, says Alan. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. I think that's all we're doing for Nick. I'm going to read this one thing. It's a friend of mine, and I think maybe we'll be done here. This is a friend of mine, smart guy. I keep trying to get him on the show. He's a lefty, and I don't know if I should, well, that's his name's out there anyway. But striking, here's what he said. This is a bump there. He had a ruling here, the bump stock that came through. He goes, SCOTUS striking down a ban on bump stocks for guns is disappointing, to say the least. So you could already see where he's at. But let's forget what the actual ruling says for a minute. We could go into that for a long, long while. The focus on the overarching philosophy behind the ruling and compare it to the Dobbs case that overturned Roe v. Wade. Now, he's not an attorney. He's just like Nick. So we'll get his input here. If you recall, the philosophical argument presented by Justice Alito and Dobbs and embraced by conservatives is that the courts should not be deciding the issue. It should be decided by the legislative branch. Okay, is that true? That's my put. Remember that argument? No, I don't. That was their justification for breaking 50 years of precedent. Just send it back to the people to decide. He's kind of right and wrong. Well, it seems it doesn't apply for guns. You see, Congress already passed a ban on bump stocks. Did they? A bipartisan bill led by the Trump administration. Did they? In other words, the people decided. But now SCOTUS seems to think the legislative branch shouldn't be making those decisions when it comes to guns. Justice Thomas and 5 others on the court used a contorted, century-old definition of machine gun to overturn a bipartisan piece of legislation that more than 85% of the public supports. Now, I know this is what the Supreme Court is supposed to do, decide if laws are constitutional or not. But the philosophical basis for when and why they intervene seems fairly arbitrary, almost like it's based on ideology rather than law. Perfect. This is exactly why this channel was created. No, it wasn't. But we're going to break down. This is my response. Very simple, because I've looked into both of these rulings, and he's wrong facially, which means his whole philosophical part is incorrect. I responded, I'll assume you didn't read the rulings, but relied on news for the interpretations. Because 1, Dobbs said abortion wasn't a fundamental right and therefore not subject to heightened scrutiny and can be regulated by states, not Congress. It didn't say, well, it did, in a sense. It goes, if Congress now wants to make it a federal law, they can try. So that was the part of the problem that he had there. He said, send it back to the legislature. Well, it's actually, they said it's a state's issue. What I mean by heightened scrutiny is if they're making laws, the states, the federal government, the SCOTUS could come in and determine where, kind of like, well, the scrutiny of how they should be interpreted and how much overreach can the government have on those. Heightened scrutiny has been determined by if you have a fundamental right, parenting, voting. I think that's is one of marriage, those kind of things. And if so, then the government's ability to put in place blocks for that or restrictions are very difficult. Medium scrutiny, low scrutiny, the government can just basically have any excuse to almost do so. They determined it wasn't a fundamental right. And if it's not a fundamental right, high scrutiny isn't used, we're taking that out, which means Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided as that part. And there we go. Now, there's other factors, a lot of that, but that's kind of your gist of where we're at here. And just to pushing back on his philosophical part. Okay. 2, bump stock ban wasn't a congressional act. This was a rule change by the ATF from the Trump administration, whereby prior to the 1934 law, the National Firearms Act had never applied to bump stocks. Therefore, these rulings aren't inconsistent for the reasons you claim. In fact, Thomas stated, quote, Congress could have enacted a law that banned all weapons capable of high rates of fire, but it did not. And so the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives was wrong to interpret the federal ban on machine guns to the extent to bump stocks. Breaking that down real quick for what he said, he goes, look, Congress passed a law banning bump stocks. That is outright not true. I don't want to say a lie, it's just not true. And it's probably just, and this guy's super smart. He's a doctor of history. He's a smart guy, but you're reading stuff rather than actually looking. Because like I said, I just quoted there where Thomas expresses what Congress could have done. So here's the deal. 1934, and Thomas breaks this all down about whether pulling is the action you need to do. So is a bump actually pulling or is it pushing and whatnot? And our spring-loaded bump stock's different than the other ones. And he talks about all that. His point, though, is ATF for years and years and years has said bump stocks do not make it a machine gun, therefore it is okay. That was their ruling all the way. It's always been. Now Trump says, hey, ban bump stocks, and he pushes it from an administration point of view, and they side with him, and now bump stocks are illegal. Congress did not pass a law. They tried to, didn't go, didn't happen, thank goodness, and then you have this. So that is our breakdown of those two issues and misunderstandings, and this is kind of why we come to this channel, right? Because we want this. I'm not a con law guy, but I love constitutional law. I mean, that's not my number one thing. I'm not a Robert Barnes telling you all the amendments that the government has violated in the Nick Rekieta case, but I can tell you, 1, don't listen to Robert Barnes on that stuff. 2, actually read the cases. The other one that came out, and I want to do a breakdown of this, is Rahimi. We just, I'd done a kind of a breakdown about this before, and it's a problem a lot of libertarian conservatives get is a misunderstanding. And this one was where a guy was the ultimate piece of shit. He was brandishing his weapon, beating up his girlfriend, shooting at people, whatnot, and she filed a domestic violence restraining order against him. Now, it was in Texas, and the DA actually came after him with a criminal protective order against her, and he said, you know what, fine. So he shows up to court. Now, one of the things I did was someone commenting about this. They said he didn't even get his day in court. He didn't even know what happened. This is Randy Weaver. They didn't say that, but that would be my thing with Ruby Ridge. Not true. He showed up. The order itself actually says he showed up, he signed, he willingly took this plea. It took a plea deal. But then the problem is, and how we come back to this, is where there was a federal statute on the books that said if you've been convicted of a domestic violence restraining order, you can't have a weapon. Well, he ended up having a weapon after that, and he said, look, under Bruin, I should be able to do this. Bruin takes this different. Is it a historical perspective? Has there ever been a historical law, restricting this before? That's the kind of the idea of Bruin, the new ruling that they have. And therefore, I shouldn't be able to be restricted, or you shouldn't add, because he basically had more time on his sentence that was much more for the the gun enhancement than was for anything that he had else. So he comes there. It goes to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court basically says, look, this isn't a problem. He had his due process. He went through this. We've got to understand Bruin a little bit better, which is, okay, there's a historical context, and it's nice to take that back, but you don't need the exact law or historical ruling from before, back in the founder's day, to be exact. It has to be analogous, okay? So abortion, analogous. now we have this analogous. What was it like at the time when guns were first here? Because he's, as I think Gorsuch actually said, if we were implying a rule where it had to be exactly similar, then you're only going to talk about muskets and knives. Those are kind of the only two things you're really going to talk about. The point is, they did extend this. They said, sorry, this gun law is appropriate, and we're giving a little bit better ruling on Bruin. Here's the problem I have and they even talk about it a little bit in the ruling. Here's the problem I have as a family law attorney, which is domestic violence restraining orders. The actual due process of going through that, going to court, and then the standards that you have, beyond a reasonable doubt, that's your criminal standards, your heightened scrutiny. We just talked about scrutiny. You talk about something like fundamental right, owning a gun. It should be very high. The problem is domestic violence restraining order, it's just a preponderance of the evidence. Preponderance of the evidence is low. It's just basically you think of a scale barely tipping over 50%, and then there's clear and convincing evidence, which is clear and convincing, it's more like a 70-some, and then beyond a reasonable doubt. That's your criminal standard where you have to have a unanimous jury type of thing. So the problem here is you go into very, very low standard of scrutiny, which is just preponderance of the evidence. For domestic violence restraining order, they say, yeah, you got a restraining order, and then they take your gun, and now that's your fundamental rights being stripped on a standard that's super low. That, to me, is a very bad problem, because it could be just as much as disturbing the peace of one of the parties. Okay, hope that got you a little bit there. Fascinating. Leave my 2A the hell alone. Great. And by the way, Dwayne, I also did a breakdown of the illegal alien that was it was an appeals court that granted him the ability to have a weapon. I would say go watch that, because everyone freaks out about that. They're like, illegal alien. This is an illegal alien why did he get the gun? He got a gun to protect himself from the BLM riots. Come on, that's a guy we like. Does this guy have bangs? Probably. I'm from Texas. I openly carry religiously. Oh, love you. Okay. Alan says, I constantly hear a ton of between my own friends groups over gun laws are wrong, but 2A applies to the federal government, not states. But the genie is out of the bottle. No, got to play the game as it is. Let's talk about that real quick, which is your 14th Amendment and my problems right now. You are completely right, Alan. So technically, the amendments never applied to the states. Okay, most states have their own constitution, have their own amendments, mirrors those of the federal government, perfectly fine. But up until Heller, that didn't even incorporate the Second Amendment to the states. So now Heller, Bruin, you've got basically those. Heller was DC, so that was federal, and it was one of those cases right in there. It wasn't Bruin, maybe it was Bruin, but they incorporated to the states the Second Amendment, and now we're stuck. But what we could do is repeal the 14th. We are stripping that somewhat away, and you see that under the issues with Dobbs as an example of starting to say substantive due process. Due process just used to be, hey, I'm served with it. Now the court's got to go give me my day in court, give me my evidence and everything to have a proper day of due process. And then I'm trying to remember the case it was in a hotel, something. I will take a look at this. One day I'm going to do a breakdown, which is also, and they're like, hey, but there's unimplied or unenumerated rights too. There's substantive due process. And you're like, what? You're just making shit up now. Yeah. Then they started incorporating these to the states, and they never should have been. And Republicans are wrong on these. Lefties are wrong on these. And by the way, I just heard some great stuff with Brian McClanahan. He did a breakdown of Mark Levin, kind of talking about some of this stuff. It's fantastic. I don't think Rahimi went far enough protecting due process. Yes, for the reasons I said. One, it's a Dwayne. I gotta take umbrage a little bit because people were saying, oh, he didn't have his due process. He didn't. He had his due process on each one of those aspects. The problem is due process for domestic violence restraining order, and then due process for getting your guns taken away should be. They're different. So it's a sneak attack really for the due process side, which is he had it for domestic violence restraining order. Matter of fact, he went in there. He said, "I'm taking a plea deal." Blah blah blah. And then his guns, by consequence of that, get taken away. The problem is, if it's beyond a reasonable doubt, everybody has that. Now, let's say it was beyond a reasonable doubt. Matter of fact, Here's the thing I don't quite get, which is a domestic violence restraining order is a private issue. In other words, it's you, it's your wife, it's got to have some sort of familial connection to it. This was a girlfriend, baby mama, perfectly fine, and you bring it to court. The difference is, though, the DA brought this one, okay? So the DA is bringing a criminal protective order, which does have beyond a reasonable doubt connotations to it. So this one, I don't believe the due process cross-check, the problems you have actually play in this. The problem is the appeals court that they had actually gone through over the Bruin thing, he said, and rightly so, people use these domestic violence restraining orders way too often to punish a party because they know that the problems you have. I deal with these all the time. Absolutely correct. That is a problem. And that I wish Rahimi would have actually codified in there, basically saying, if you're going to take a person's guns, it's got to be the same due process standard for the initial as the gun itself. Because you can be protecting your ex-wife. Hey, what are the kids? Are they playing football today? Do you have their clothing? And it's 6 a.m. on a Sunday. Had this case, and they allowed a restraining order to go against them because it was disturbing the peace of the party. Okay, there is the breakdown of that. Let's see, did we hit everything else? SCOTUS, there's a sovereign citizen case. We'll talk about that one maybe next time. We'll break down about sovereign citizens. So there you go. Dwayne, glad you're in here. Glad everyone else is in here. What else do we have? I'm going to try to keep doing a show on Friday. So I used to do these Friday afternoon, about 3 or 4 my time, which is 6 or so Eastern. But it seems like we're getting a good crowd here on the weekdays. So I hope you enjoyed that. We did some mailbag. We did a little Ryan Long comedy, and I think everything else. So as far as that goes, I think we're gonna head out. I got some work to do. I got clients banging up here. Hey, I've got this issue. Yeah, okay, I get it. Fill your retainer agreement back up, or your trust back up. All right, see you guys. Like and I said like and subscribe.
Okay, I'm leaving now. Bye, guys.
But she's back. Chick-fil-A is completely overrated. It's not that good. I prefer Zaxby's. I prefer Popeyes.
Takes a tough man to make a tender forecast, Nick. And I guess that's me. Keep fucking that chicken.
Should I vote for Dick Cheney on the Libertarian Party? Do I have an obligation to vote for Dick Cheney?
I would say so.
Yes.
Did it work for those people?
No, it never does. I mean, these people somehow delude themselves into thinking it might, but it might work for us.
That one dude was like, not a podcast, I can't find it anywhere, and they don't have video.
Oh, yeah, Peter Janke, yeah.
Yeah, I blocked him.
I'll do it. If he unblocks me, I'll...
He'll buy your shirt if you unblock him, Bert.
He's a wigger.
Yeah, nothing cooler than a 49-year-old wigger. I just started live streaming. Cut me some slack. I'm pretty high tech for a boomer. But anyways,
boomer.